Hello and welcome to Voices of the Vic podcast with me, Ben Aiton. Thank you for joining us once again. And tonight it is a match preview. Watford are hosting Derby County on Saturday, 3 o'clock at Vicarage Road. And tonight I'll be joined by Cory and Jason from the Rams Review Show podcast. So they'll be on very shortly. But just before I get them on, I don't know if many Watford fans have seen the news today. There's been some breaking news broken by Adam Leventhal. So Watford have agreed a deal in principle with Bournemouth to sign striker Daniel Jefferson on a season-long loan. The 21-year-old is likely to remain with Bournemouth until next week before joining up with a Championship club. Bournemouth play Newcastle United in the Premier League on Sunday before a Carabao Cup fixture with West Ham on Wednesday. Jefferson has been impressed with Watford's head coach Tom Cleverley's plans for the season and has made the choice after considering various options. And Watford have targeted a new striker all transfer window. The Canada-born striker missed the majority of last season through injury and a blood clot, but returned to training in April and played the last 20 minutes of Sheffield United's final game of the season. He was offered a new contract at Sheffield United, but he obviously wanted to explore his options elsewhere, so he's joined Premier League side Bournemouth. So it's an exciting signing for Watford. We've been looking for that number 9 striker for a while. It looks like it is Daniel Jefferson who will be coming in, but it looks like he'll be coming in after Bournemouth's Carabao Cup fixture next Wednesday. So that's one to watch, Hornets. But as I said, I am joined by Cory and Jason tonight from the Rams Review podcast. I'm just going to let them in both now on my own tonight, so I might have a few technical difficulties. Nope, that all worked perfectly fine. Thank you, boys, for joining me tonight on the Voice of the Vic. This is like your second or third appearance now. You was back on about 2 seasons ago when you boys were in the Championship. So welcome back, firstly. How are you both?
Ben, it's a pleasure to be here. I think when Jason and I, we were caught up in the euphoria of promotion, and we kind of turned to ourselves and we thought, hey, we get to talk to Ben and Mike at Voices of the Vic next year. So that was a positive. But yeah, I'm doing fantastic, and it's exciting to be back in the Championship and looking forward to what on paper appears to be a pretty big game at the weekend.
Yeah, it's an exciting fixture early on in the season. Jason, how are you doing, mate?
I'm all right, Ben. I echo Cory's sentiments from a couple of years ago. You guys were one of the best podcasts, and we aren't just saying it. You were one of the best podcasts that we spoke to. We've had cracking chats over the years. So no, absolute pleasure joining you. And it's disappointing to hear that about Jefferson, because I know Derby were involved in him as well. And actually, he was on loan at Burton 2 years ago. So obviously our radio station covers both Derby and Burton. So we've heard his name mentioned quite a bit. So yeah, I'm not saying I've got the inside scoop on him, but we've heard good things about him. So yeah, hopefully that's a decent signing for you.
Yeah, I saw he played at Burton for a year or so on loan from Sheffield United, and he scored a few goals for him as well. So hopefully he'll be able to recover from what it sounds like a horrible time last year, suffering from injuries and also a blood clot. So hopefully he can get back to being fully fit and getting that confidence back, because there's a decent striker in him. Scored on his Sheffield United debut when he was 17 away at Everton as well, I believed. So yeah, it was definitely an exciting signing. But let's not talk about Watford too much. This is all dedicated to Derby County tonight. Let's find out what's been going on with Derby for the last 2 seasons. Obviously, you were relegated from Championship 2 years ago. You've gone down to League One. Took a couple of years to come back up. How's that journey been, Cory, to find yourself back in the Championship?
Well, first of all, really excited to be back in the Championship. I think Jason would probably share this. I think League One was a lot of fun for us, but we didn't want to spend more than 2 years down there because it's not the best league. You go to some outposts, and you have some strange games, strange refereeing decisions, playing with some very strange against some very strange kind of players. I think the club needed a reset. I think that was something that was always going to come, and unfortunately, it came in the fact of administration and points deductions, which was brutal and horrible to deal with, and I don't wish that on any footballing supporter. But then go back into League One, and sign the caliber of players that we did with David McGoldrick and Connor Hurahan and Curtis Nelson and stuff, to get those kind of players through the door was fantastic. And then, we missed narrowly out on the playoffs in the first season by, I think it was goal difference, I think, Jason, on the last day. We started the season with Liam Rosenior that first year, and it was kind of, I think a lot of people wanted to give Liam Rosenior a chance. He was never going to get that chance. They sacked him, brought Paul Warren in, who had this good track record in League One. So essentially, Derby took 10 games to get sorted. And then we went to a massive 16, 17 game unbeaten run, which was fantastic. And then catapulted us up the league. And we thought, well, promotion's really on here. And the problem, Ben, when you start thinking that it's on, then you start getting excited about it. And then you ultimately get disappointed, where I think if you'd said we would have finished on goal difference outside the playoffs at the start of that season, fantastic. We would have took that. And then going into the second year, continuing building, continuing to change some things, give Paul Warren a full season. And ultimately it ended up with one of the best seasons that Derby's had in their history. Caveat with the fact that is in League One. So, let's caveat that we didn't, win the Champions League, but to get the most ever away victories, to get the most ever points in a season, to play some of the football that we did, to have the players that we've had come through the team and stuff like that's been fantastic. And then it's just been kind of exciting and nervous so far in the closed season to see who we're going to bring in and how we're going to shape up for the championship.
Yeah, it must have been enjoyable again, Jason, to watch Derby. Obviously, you've had a couple of tough seasons in the championship, and then it ended in defeat. And obviously, you've had your issues off the field as well with your owners as well. I understand you're under new ownership now. Is it a local guy who owns the club now, Jason?
Yeah, local business development company, David Clowes. He was a North Stand supporter for 30, 40 years and found himself in the dugout, he had to basically, Derby were very, very, very close to going out of business. And he was not quite the 11th hour, but probably 10:30, if that makes sense. And he felt that obviously he said from day one, didn't want to own Derby County. He didn't want that. He was quite happy just being a supporter, but he felt he couldn't let the club die through. And at the end of the day, we had 3 or 4 failed takeover attempts from certain individuals. One of them who earlier this year got convicted and sent to jail on fraud terms. So, in all honesty, I'm quite glad that obviously the person that's taken over has taken over. But yeah, he felt that obviously he didn't want to see his club die, and it sounds like it was very, very close to that. But I must admit, in the 18 months, 2 years now since he's been in charge, Derby aren't the same spending force that they were 3 years ago in the Championship when we last met. We're not spending £7-8 million on average midfielders like we were under Mel Morris and Bradley Johnson and players like that. We cut our cloth accordingly. He's taken on, I think it's reportedly in the region of around £50 million worth of debt. I mean, anybody who wants to come in, and I mean, I'm as big a Derby fan as anybody, but if somebody said you can own the club, but you've got to take £50 million on your shoulders, it takes a certain man to do that. He has got money behind him, but I don't think he's not a multi-millionaire. There's no two ways about that. Certainly not that much to pile into a football club, but it's nice. And obviously you'll know just as much as us that being owned by foreign consortiums and foreign clubs sometimes it can be great, sometimes it can really damage a team. And actually the last 2 years, the last 10 years, even though obviously our previous ownership went a little bit sour, being owned by a local person with local interest, local knowledge, and wanting for the best for the club. And I'll still say our previous owner wanted the best for the club. It obviously just ended in a very, very sour note. Whereas David Clowes has come in, he's quite a breath of fresh air. He wants to do things the right way. I think, as I say, he's a reluctant owner. maybe if Derby can stay up and maybe post a relatively comfortable finish this season, then of course the profitability of that changes, and maybe he changes his mind. But anytime we've not heard too many interviews from him. I think he's literally done 3 in 2 years officially, and every time he's kind of made it quite clear that he is a reluctant owner, but one that is more than happy to take it on. And at the end of the day, we sit here back in the Championship, and obviously without him, to be honest, we wouldn't have been there. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah, no, he's done an incredible job to sort Derby currently out. Obviously, like you say, 10 and a half hours away maybe from going out of business, to reset the football club, give it a different mentality, bring back that community feel with the club, and the fans are on board straight away. And the fans have always been there for Derby County. The attendance is ridiculous at Pride Park. They always sell out, even when you were struggling and you was going down that season in the Championship, getting behind Wayne Rooney. Obviously, he was fielding loads of youngsters, but the fans were there each week, just giving their money to the club to try and help keep it alive. So the fan base at Derby's been absolutely fantastic. But it's just good to see that a decent club the size of Derby are back to where they should be. Okay, they should probably, you guys might think they need to be higher up the table than that, but it's stepping stones, and you're on your way back, and it's just good to see from an outsider's point of view. Jason's already mentioned that your transfer policies have changed from spending about £6-7 million on midfielders. You've had quite a busy transfer window already, Cory, but it's not spending the amount of money that you were previously. Who have you brought in this summer, and is there anyone that's like taken your eye so far?
Yeah, for sure, Ben. We made Cory Taylor's move from Charlton. That he was on loan last season. We've made that a permanent deal. We brought back Ibu Adams, who was a lone star for us in the second half of last year. And I think Jason would also agree that we would not have gotten promoted without Ibu Adams in that midfield. We've made his loan permanent for, I think it was around 600,000 or something like that. We brought in Kenzo Houtman from AZ Alkmaar in the Netherlands for, 700, 800,000 in midfield, add a bit of creativity in there. We've also added in our largest signing actually came in last week. Swedish goalkeeper Jacob Videll Zetterstrom from Georgens in Sweden, paid £1.4 million for him, which, in the Championship, Ben, as you're acutely aware, that is not a lot of money these days. There's a lot of money floating around in the Championship, but that is the position that Derby are in, is that is going to be our highest, signing of the summer. We have a budget. We've got a few other people. Ben Osborne came in on a free transfer from Sheffield United. And I'm sure, we also had Caden Jackson from Cardiff. And I'm sure that there's somebody else that I'm forgetting, but we have tight budgets, and I think that we're trying to make the best out of them. We know that, we all brought in midfielder David Ozo from Crystal Palace on a loan as well. He played a couple of Premier League games last year. So we know that the club wants to bring in at least 8 more players. And that's assuming that we don't lose anybody or anybody wants to leave. We've loaned out Tyrese Forna to Salford, who was part of our engine room last year, but got usurped by Ibu Adams, so didn't really have a place. So we need about 8 players, and it's a busy old window from now until the end of the month, 11 odd days or something until the window closes. But yeah, I think when you look at it, I'm very excited about the new goalkeeper. He may make his debut on Saturday against Watford. We don't know, though, because Josh Vickers got in the EFL Championship Team of the Week after his performance against Middlesbrough. So wait and see on that one. But, he's 6'6". He wears one of them Peter Cech skull caps. So he's got a very deep kind of sultry voice as well, which he didn't expect when he gave the interview. It was like, well, hard eyes were popping up out of my things. I was like, well, already just send me the jersey with his name on it and a skull cap, because that guy's it's exciting because different profiles of players. Oftentimes, like Jason said, we brought in Bradley Johnson and Jacob Butterfield and Nick Blackmans and stuff, and they've not really fit the bill, and Derby became a real soft place for players to get easy wage. But, you look at it now, Ben Osborne, Derby lad. Dad was a Derby County season ticket holder. He's back at the club. Caden Jackson is just electric pace. And I've said this many times, whatever happens in a game, pace will never leave you. You could have a bad game, but you'll always be fast. And he proved that against Middlesbrough with a wonderful goal from inside his own half, dribbled over half the field, took the keeper one-on-one and beat him. So yeah, it's been really exciting to do it. Kenzo Houtman looks creative. He's going to need a bit of time to adjust to the championship, but he looks like he has some potential in there. And so we're starting to get players that are being paid for what they could potentially produce rather than paying for players on what they have passed, and that's always a good way. I don't want to get, well, look at this guy. He's done all this stuff. It's like, well, he's 38 and we're paying like $5 million for him. I'd rather pay that money for a lad and you can say, this is what he can achieve later on, where his best years and his sell on there is in the future. So really excited about it. I would anticipate there'll still be a few more comings and goings as with all clubs. I would anticipate the club to go and try to get at least 3, maybe 4 Premier League loans once those squads are settled down. But yeah, it's an exciting time. So stay tuned for Zetterstrom potentially in goal. But Caden Jackson has been an absolute live wire so far this season.
Yeah, I saw his lightning pace, like you say, against Middlesbrough for that goal that he took from his own half, and then had the confidence to take it round the goalkeeper as well. Yeah, fantastic finish. I think I listened to a Paul Warner interview afterwards, and he said he's had his eye on him for a while and finally got his man to bring him to Derby. So exciting prospects for Derby County. Jason, the season probably didn't go the way you would have wanted on that opening day of the season. Live on the Sky cameras, 4-1 defeat away to Blackburn Rovers. What went wrong that evening for Derby?
Ben, I was there at Ewood Park, and it was always going to be one of those games. We build it as a bit of a litmus test for Derby. Obviously, the struggles that Blackburn had last season, apart from obviously Smodics up front, but a team who had a player who scored 27 goals and still stayed up on the last game of the season, you kind of had to look at and think that this season, without too many different transfers, they were probably going to struggle. So yeah, we looked at it as a bit of a litmus test. And don't get me wrong, first game Friday night under the lights, as anybody would as a home side, they absolutely came out of the blocks. And for the first 10-15 minutes, it was all Blackburn. For anybody who saw the game, they would attest to that. Derby conceded, for me, a bit of a sloppy goal, which obviously got their tails up. They're the home side. That's what you would expect. But I thought sort of the last 5-10 minutes of the first half, and then the period in the second half of 10-15 minutes where Derby had one cleared off the line. Again, anybody who saw the game would have seen it. Derby obviously grabbed the equaliser, and at 1-1, it was Derby in the ascendancy. I think, to be honest, I was certainly sat there at Ewood Park thinking, well, okay, championship life isn't all that bad, is it? It's Derby can compete at this level. And then a little bit of naivety, a little bit of inexperience. I mean, this Derby side, one thing to, obviously, I know we just talked about transfers, but one thing that people have to understand about this Derby side, if you actually look through the squad, there is very, very little experience in the championship. We have got a couple of journeymen, but they've probably been bit part players in the championship. So the bulk of our squad have not got a great deal of championship experience, which obviously is quite an important thing. And I think that's what was sort of Derby's undoing. Blackburn made 3 substitutions, brought on Smodics, brought on their new Japanese forward, and to be fair, they absolutely tore Derby apart for the final half an hour. Derby, I think when Paul Warne probably saw that Derby had got an opportunity and went for the kill a little bit too early when it went 1-1. And of course, we know in the championship, and obviously Saturday against Middlesbrough is a testament to that. you take the chances when you've got them, but if you force your hand in the Championship, you are going to get picked off. There's no two ways about it. And of course, at 3-1, 2-1, and certainly 3-1 down, Derby are obviously chasing to get back in the game, and we've conceded a very, very sloppy fourth, and it was welcome back to the Championship, Derby County. Just a little bit of naivety, thinking he could probably play a little bit more down the wings than we actually could have done. And then you reverse that at home. We were typically against Middlesbrough so much more solid, so much more resolute, didn't offer a great deal going forward. We pounced on a mistake and we end up 1-0 winners. So to be fair, it was an away performance at home, but then a home performance away. And so Derby's obviously 2 results so far have sort of cancelled themselves out a little bit. So it'll be very interesting to see how we quite line up against you guys on Saturday, because he likes a change of 4-3-3 and 5-3-2, 3-5-2. We picked up a couple of injuries on Saturday, which actually might hamper us playing wing backs. So we could actually see the 4-3-3, that little bit more rigidity, which I think is more attestant to an away performance than a home performance. But it's so far it's 2 games in. It's welcome back to the Championship and a little bit of a learning curve. Probably lost the one we expected to pick something in at, and then the one we expected to lose, we've actually got the 3 points. So the Championship, it's a crazy old league, isn't it, Ben?
It is indeed. That's the Championship for you. And that's why we love this division, because it's so unpredictable, so much better than the Premier League. Anyone can beat anyone here. Just look at like last season when QPR and Sheffield Wednesday were dead and buried, and then they just turned their fortunes round. New manager bounces, and they both finished really strongly. And like I say, anything can happen in this division. You didn't dwell too long on the 4-1 loss at Blackburn Rovers. You've won 2 games since, obviously the Carabao Cup victory over Chesterfield, 2-1 victory, I think that was. But you also played Chesterfield in pre-season where you lost 4-0, I think. I've seen some videos on TikTok where fans weren't massively pleased with the performance back then, and there was maybe a little bit of heat on Paul Warne. How do fans feel about Paul Warne, Cory? Obviously, he got you back up into the Championship, but for fans enjoying the football under Paul Warne?
And I'm always a fan of winning games, and I don't really care how it's done as long as, Derby come away with 3 points. I would say that the jury's a little out. I think Paul Warne's had a great record in League One, not so great in the Championship, and it's a real litmus test for him this season. And I would say, Ben, anybody in the Championship will lose their job if they lose 3 or 4 games. That's just the nature of the beast. But I would suspect that, he'll be given a little bit of leash. But if we are in the relegation zone, or 4th bottom and really struggling in terms of coming into January, maybe February, we might look to stay in the Championship by changing the manager. I think that's utmost paramount. It really hit a vitriolic kind of thing last season at Shrewsbury away, where club captain Hunter Hurahan approached the crowd, and they were really, really on the back. And it was a big test for David Clowes and his leadership to sit there and say, is this the right man? Do I believe that he can take us forward? He ultimately decided to not pull the trigger, keep Paul Warne, and it paid dividends because we played a lot better. But again, the goal is to stay in the Championship. And every year you stay in the Championship, it gets a little easier because you can have more money and you can buy better players and you continue to build. So it's that kind of thing. But I would say that Paul Warne's style of play, excuse me, is not everybody's cup of tea. I think it's a different Derby side than what you've probably seen a couple of years ago. We're not going to play the tiki-taka football, keep in possession, playing people off the park. That's not the way that this Derby team's set up. I think we're more of a smash and grab kind of team. We do play some good things at time, but it's very kind of not what you would expect from a Derby County kind of team. And so, time will tell on that. Ben, personally, I think Paul Warne's a very, very nice man. I've had the privilege of meeting him. He's a very, very nice man, very personable. You can see why people gravitate. You'd want to play for him as a player and whatever. Are the results there? Yes, you can say the results were there in League One. Are the performances there in terms of rolling teams over and really looking? Nah. And I think that, you get the overreaction sometimes, Ben, in preseason when you lose a game. Preseason results are meaningless. It's all about fitness. It's all about players. It's all about, who's getting fit. You're not even working so much on shape or tactics. You're just trying to get people fit, work on a couple of things like, hey, maybe let's set off for 20 minutes and let them come and see how we defend in a low block or whatever. And I think that, you can get some crazy reactions off of preseason games. I would say that Paul Warren isn't everybody's cup of tea, that there's some sections of the fan base that just do not like the guy, and there's some that do. So it's probably the same as every other football club. But the important thing is to note, Ben, that we have to stay in the championship. That is the most important thing for Derby County this season. If we were to go back down to League One, I wouldn't say it'd be catastrophic because we have an owner who cares. We're not going to go out of business, but it would be horribly detrimental to this team and to like the psyche of the club and us supporters. I think we have to stay in the championship. I don't know if Paul Warren's the right man to keep us there. But again, as you know, Ben, being an experienced football fan yourself, like I said, you lose 4 games, everybody wants you to, get sacked. You win 5 games, you could get the England job. That's the way. Or, in Watford's case, you lose, you're going down at halftime. And they're like, you've had 45 minutes as the Watford manager. You're out of here. It's not working anymore. After they give him like a 40-year deal. That's but that's the nature of the beast. He's just not everybody's cup of tea. It's a different style of football that we're used to. But again, as long as you're winning games, a lot of those things are irrelevant. But yeah, to answer your question, he's not everybody's cup of tea. And if we're languishing in the bottom half of the table, if we're languishing in the relegation zone, I think a decision will be made.
How do you feel about him, Jason?
To be honest with you, I do echo a fair bit of what Cory has said. I mean, you've got to look. League One, Derby went down. We brought him in. He's got tremendous reputation down in League One. Obviously, he comes up into the Championship and he's taken Rotherham down twice. No disrespect to Rotherham. I would like to think Derby are probably working with a bit of a better scouting range, a bit of a better budget, a bit of a better pull, this, that, and the other. But ultimately, he was so close. In most fans' minds, he was so close to losing his job last year, as Cory mentioned, against Shrewsbury. The fans had just turned. His football is not pretty to watch. I'll be honest. I don't know of many times over the last 18 months to 2 years that he's been in charge that I've been wowed off my seat. But at the end of the day, I don't get me wrong, going up like an Ipswich, coming out of League One, smashing League One, moving into the Championship, smashing the Championship. That's once in a 20, 30-year cycle. Not many teams are going to do that. We brought somebody in who's obviously theoretically brilliant, who knows his way around the division. And so, in all respects, if anybody had actually done their research on Paul Warren, as we did, and we spoke to Rotherham podcasts, and they said exactly the same. His football's not fantastic, but he gets results. A lot more Derby fans would probably be in a different mindset. It's not pretty at times, Ben. I can't lie, but it's been effective, and it's been effective in League One. He's got just as much to prove, and we mentioned it on our podcast last night. Them as a coaching staff, after 2 failed Championship campaigns and both ending in relegation, they've got just as much to prove as anybody else at the club. And obviously, if that all works out, ultimately Derby stay up, and that's great for us, and we build, like Cory said. But it's not pretty. It isn't. It can be effective. Can it? But it's in that style of that League One. Obviously, the dogfight, all this, that, and the other. I'm not saying Derby can't put the ball down on the floor and play some football, because we can. And obviously, the result against Saturday proves Middlesbrough, for me, are going to be a top 6 side. I'd be gobsmacked if they're not. Okay, we absolutely rode a luck, and anybody who's managed to see it on another day, Derby lose 3-4-1. But we've got a little bit about us as well. And obviously, we can grab something. We're strong on the counter-attack, and we're pretty decent from set pieces. We're not going to blow teams away. Very much like Cory said, we're not the Derby of 2 years ago. We're not ball down, gripping football, being dominating teams. We're not. But then when you look back to what obviously Derby have gone through over the last 2-3 years, there's no real reason why you would ever think that obviously that was there. And we have changed. Derby have been, as Derby fans, we've been blessed obviously over the last 10 years of flirting with playoffs and flirting with spending money and flirting with this type of football. We've now got a manager and a coaching setup and a coaching style and a playing style that I don't think we've seen for years as Derby fans. And it's hard to get used to. But at the end of the day, what obviously we had previously was to our detriment, and in the end, nearly obviously put us out of business. So we as fans have to accept the change. We have to accept the difference, and we've got to get behind it. I mean, as Cory mentioned, 10, 15 games down the line, if Derby aren't I wouldn't expect Derby to dominate games, but if Derby aren't in games on a regular basis, then of course the manager is going to come under scrutiny. But every single club's in that same boat. So I wouldn't say the jury's out as such, but there are still, I think, more Derby fans waiting for the moment that things go wrong for him, rather than probably getting behind him and supporting him and supporting the team, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear. Like you say, very effective manager, as in League One. It's just whether he can transition that into being Championship manager now. He's had enough cracks at it. So let's just see how he gets on this season. But Cory, obviously this season, the aim is to stay up. Do you believe Derby's got enough in their locker to stay up this season?
Oh, for sure, Ben. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's tough. I think it's tough to decide. I think, the league doesn't really take shape until after about 10 games. You can't really read much into the league right now, despite the fact there's been, 3 managers sacked already in various different leagues. Derby still need about 8 players. If we get a couple of injuries or a couple of suspensions, we're done for a while. We need bodies, and so it'll have a lot clearer picture in the next 11 days or so, as the window closes. But to not, tip tap around your question, I'd like to think, taking my Derby County hat off and just looking at it as a general football supporter, I think there might be 3 worse teams in the league than Derby. And I think that might be saving them. I think the fact that I think we have the quality to stay up. I think it'll be a tough slog. I think maybe, 4th bottom, 5th bottom, 6th bottom kind of is what you're trying to achieve. Lower third of the table in and around that fight all year round, all season. But I'd like to think that there are 3 worse teams around. I think some of the managerial decisions that have been made around the EFL as well play a lot into it. There's a couple managers in there that they're just not very good. They're going to get found out. They're going to go to another job and do also a crap job there as well, because that's their track record. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. But I think that we do have enough up top. One of the players I forgot that we signed was Jerry Yates. Absolute,
good signing.
Fantastic at Blackpool. Lost his way a bit at Swansea. He's eligible to make his debut against Watford because he's been suspended for 3 games because he did something stupid last year. But I would think that defensively we're normally pretty good. We're pretty tight. We'll see what Zetterstrom looks like when he starts playing. That can accent it. I think that we can be Blackburn. We're very easy to break down. It was like a warm knife cutting through very warm butter. But I think that we can be defensively solid. And I've been actually surprised with how strong we've been at set pieces. And I think we do have a little bit of a goal threat. And if Jerry Yates can, find his form from Blackpool, and Caden Jackson can continue to be very quick, and Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, who was arguably probably our most influential and important player in League One over 2 seasons, can continue to. You can't directly relate League One to Championship. It's a step up. There's going to be a statistical drop in things. But if he can get half the goals or be half as influential as what he was last season, that's going to be a positive for us. So in answer to your question, Ben, yes, I do think that we can stay up barely, because I think that there are 3 worse teams than us. But it'll be interesting. And when we talk again, when the fixtures turn around, hopefully I'll be a little bit more joyful, or I'll eat my words.
Yeah, hopefully you'll be a bit more relaxed.
Keep the receipt.
I really rate that signing for Jerry Yates, by the way. I think he's a terrific striker. Like you said, fantastic at Blackpool. He did well at Swansea in a struggling Swansea side. They didn't hit the heights of maybe what their fans expected, but still scored plenty of goals for him. And I didn't realise he's been suspended for the first 3 games this season. So typically he comes in for his debut against Watford this weekend. So buzzing about that now. So cheers for that, Cory. Ruined my evening. But Jason, you mentioned earlier, picked up a couple of injuries at the weekend. Who was injured, and could you maybe give me your predicted starting 11 for Saturday?
Yeah, so influential Republic of Ireland centre-back Erin Cashin, our young stalwart, but people will remember him from obviously the season we got relegated from the Premier League. That was from the Championship, not the Premier League. That was his first real full season as a centre half at the age of 19, I think he was when he came in, and obviously everybody was fully expecting us to lose him. He hung around for the first season, and then we thought he was going to go. He had a very big sniff around him by Brighton. It's odd to know exactly, but we think there was a bid on the table of about 4.5 million, and for whatever reason, it didn't go through. Beginning of League One campaign last season, whilst going through this Championship transfer, he was awful. He was awful. He'd lost his head. He really had. He got dropped. We brought him. Oh, I say dropped. That sounds harsh. He did get dropped, but he came back in straight after the transfer window was closed. And then I think after last night, got the awards. He was one of the best players in League One. And so he comes up with a bit of a pedigree. As I say, he's only done, 1 season in the Championship. He went off with a concussion. Our goalkeeper absolutely cleaned him out. Should have actually cleaned him out and caught the ball. He didn't. Ended up having a bit of a knock on his head. So that was a concussion on Saturday. He looked very upset. We used a concussion substitution. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's back involved on Saturday. And then the other one is our right back. And it's very interesting, Ben, because we played with wing backs. Potentially, depending on who you listen to, we played with sort of wing backs against Blackburn at Ewood Park, and Kane Wilson he's fantastic
was
at
he
going
the one
forward.
At Forest Green not so long ago?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he, for a guy of 6 foot, 16, 17 stone, he is like a bull. He really is. Going forward, he's fantastic. Defensively, not so strong. And he got caught out a couple of times. Saturday, he was a bit more reserved defensively, but Derby obviously were under the cosh. He went down with a hamstring injury, unfortunately. And after the match, Paul Warren did say that he actually felt his hamstring a couple of days previous in training. It was a bit tight. So I'd be surprised if we see him involved on Saturday. It's going to be interesting. Like I say, we went with a little bit of a progressive formation. There was clearly something that Paul Warren felt against Blackburn that we could expose, and it didn't quite work out. And then, of course, we've come up against Middlesbrough, kind of knowing what they're going to do. We sat 11 men behind the ball. I don't obviously know what Paul Warren's expectations are of Watford at Vicarage Road. Obviously, you've started the season pretty strongly, 3 wins out of 3, when a lot of people I know have tipped you to struggle. And obviously we spoke with Mike the other day and we went through all that and the reasons why, and there's cautious optimism as well. I think we're looking at the goalkeeping situation. It's been the talking point of Derby fans' transfer window ever since we got linked with a new goalkeeper. Anytime you get linked with a foreign player, appreciate Watford probably get linked with them a little more than Derby do. But anytime we get linked with a foreign player, we're quite interested. The fee of 1.4 million, Derby are not in a position where we can obviously pass that kind of money about and just stick them on the bench. And then Vickers turns into a prime Neuer on Saturday almost. And after a few underwhelming, not awful, but a few underwhelming performances, he probably realises now that he was Derby's only number one goalkeeper throughout all of pre-season. He was the only goalkeeper we had in the building. We signed a third choice a couple of weeks ago who played in that 4-0 defeat against Chesterfield in pre-season and didn't fill himself full of glory. But yeah, so maybe he's stepped up, and hopefully that's a competition. The fact that obviously we're through also in the Carabao Cup and we play Barrow on the Tuesday, I've got a sneaking suspicion that Vickers will actually keep his place, and I think we'll introduce the new goalkeeper ready for a cup game and then a bow at Pride Park. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised to see either in net, but I am going to stick my neck out and put Vickers in goal. And then, to be honest with you, defensively, it kind of picks itself, Ben. We've got a couple of options, but in all honesty, we've got a first choice and we've got a second choice, in my opinion. I'd fully expect a back four. We go in Ryan Namby at right back. Centre off, we'll certainly have Curtis Nelson. If Aaron Cashin is fit, it'll be Aaron Cashin. If he's not, it'll be Sonny Bradley. Left back will be almost certain. I would say it'll be Callum Elder. Although Craig Forsyth, obviously a player who has graced Vicarage Road and is an 11-year.
I can't believe he's still playing.
11-year servant at Derby, and I'll tell you now, he's still one of the best left backs we've ever had. I know he played for you as more of a left winger, but I tell you, we've had such a return out of Craig Forsyth. Played his testimonial last year, and he's still churning out. Plays a bit more at centre half these days because of the legs, but he can do a job. And he came on Saturday, and you can just see the experience, an absolute quality player, and somebody who, I know it sounds silly, but will go down in Derby history as one of Derby's great players of the 2000s. He really will. He might come in, but Callum Elder, to be fair, has played pretty solidly over 2 games. But it will depend if we're looking for that counter, which we break from out wide and from the wing. So I would expect Elder, but you'll definitely get to see Forsyth. And then the midfield's an interesting one. You've got Ben Osborne will be a 100% starter, and then it will depend if we play a two holders and let something go going forward, or we go one sort of holder and one attacker. We've seen David Ozo, somebody who Cory mentioned, obviously him on loan from Crystal Palace. He's got every talent, but he is raw. There's no two ways about it. And I think personally, from what I've seen of him, he's played both games so far. He's just lacking a little bit of experience in the Championship. Many players do it. They don't realise how fast it is. They don't realise how physical it is. As soon as he gets up to speed, he's going to be, I think, one of Derby's best players this season. And arguably, he could be right up there as one of the best Championship players. It'll all depend how we go, Ben. If we go defensive, it will be Ozo and Ebo Adams. Ebo Adams was the lad from Fleetwood who we had on loan last season from Cardiff. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Would not have gone up without him. He slotted in that John Eustace role. Somebody again, obviously, who Watford are very, very familiar with. He was a Rolls Royce in midfield. He really was. He played that John Eustace role, as Derby fans call it, to an absolute T. Unfortunately, he picked up an injury in pre-season, and so we've not seen anything really of him apart from a little cameo in the Cup and a little cameo on Saturday, all dependent on his fitness. But yeah, we'll certainly have Ben Osborne. And then out wide, I would fully expect Nathaniel Mendes-Lang to be involved on the left-hand side. We've got a couple of injuries sort of dating back to pre-season on that left side, Corey Blackett-Taylor being one of them, Tom Barkhausen, who obviously Championship experience, was involved heavily in pre-season, but we've barely seen him in the opening 3 fixtures. So actually one possibly tipped to leave Derby before the end of the transfer window. You'll see, I would assume, Caden Jackson, who scored obviously on Saturday, I would see him more as a right winger role, certainly away from home. And then you've got a toss-up between bringing Jerry Yates straight in off the back of clearly not a minute so far this season, or, of course, Derby's top goal scorer from last season, James Collins, who did play on Saturday, and it was a thankless task against, obviously, a very difficult opponent in Middlesbrough. So if we go a bit more attacking, we might drop one of the holders and play Kenzo Houtman, who, again, Dutch international, he's waiting to find his feet in the Championship. So I think, again, another player who can, on his day, and with a little bit more experience behind him in the Championship, can become good for Derby. It'll be interesting to see how Paul Warner's, for me, has looked, obviously, at your last 3 games. Obviously, 2 wins in the league, a 5-0 against MK Dons. And it'll be dependent on where he sees the strengths and weaknesses. If we go defensive or not, that we can tweak formations. We have got 2 or 3 formations that we can roll into. So it's just as intriguing from a Derby's point of view as it is from a Watford's, as quite how we'll line up. Dependent on, I suppose, in some respects, how much respect he gives Watford, obviously, on their own patch.
It'd be interesting to see how you boys line up and how you approach the game. Like you say, would it be in a defensive setup by Paul Warne? He's coming to Vicarage Road wanting to get a decent Championship start under his belt. Obviously, you've picked up 3 points so far this season. You've won the game, but you didn't think you was going to win, and then lost the game you thought you might have had a chance in winning. So it could be one of those seasons. We'll go now for score predictions just before we round it up. Cory, will you be watching the game on Saturday, I imagine?
I will be, Ben. I think it's a big game. I think it's an important game for both sides. Obviously, Middlesbrough started the season like a house on fire, and Derby picked up an unexpected win against Middlesbrough last time out. And, the way I view it, Ben, all the experts, with air quotes or however you want to do that, has said that both these teams are going to struggle throughout the course of the season. So I'm seeing this as an early season 6-pointer. And I know it's a bit early to say it's a 6-pointer, but I'm saying it's a 6-pointer because I think it's that important of a game. It's important for you guys to continue your great start to the season. And it's important for us to prove that we can go on the road and get a victory. Blackburn was a chastening experience for us. We learned a lot that day. Hey, welcome back to the Championship. There was a 20-minute period where we looked pretty good and we thought, hey, we can get back in this. And then, the Swiss cheese defense tactics came out anymore. And then there was just nobody there on the far side when the balls started going to the back of the net. So I see this as an early season 6-pointer. I think both teams need to win. I think both teams need to go for it. I think both teams have exciting options to go and do it. So I'm hopeful that we're going to get a nice high scoring game. But Ben, 2-1 Derby.
2-1 Derby. Okay.
Because I have to say 2-1. I have to say 2-1 Derby.
You have to back your team, don't you?
I'm not going to come on here, Ben, and say I know that you promised me 50 quid if I said Watford would win, but I'm not. I can't do it. I'll return the check.
That was Mike. It definitely wasn't me. That was Mike. He's the one with the money around here. He's got a massive wedding he's paying off at the moment as well. So he must be finding the money from somewhere. Jason, what would your score prediction be? And will you be coming down to watch it?
No, unfortunately, we sold out before I could get hold of a ticket. So no, on this occasion, I've been before, but no, on this occasion, no. It's what Derby. It's what Derby turn up, as I alluded to a minute ago. It's what Paul Warne looks at. I think Cory's absolutely spot on. We've learned something from Blackburn, and it's good to see that we've maybe learned it early. Rather than trying to obviously play the same way in 3 or 4 games and getting obviously slacked in the 4 games. We've got that defensive solidity. I think if we'd have lost against Middlesbrough as well on Saturday, I think we'd be having a bit of a different conversation. But I think that just goes. It was a typical away performance at home. We dug in. We waited for a mistake. We are good on the counter. Obviously, the introduction of Jerry Yates is interesting because Caden Jackson, who's been playing up front, isn't necessarily a striker out and out, and Ipswich never used him like that. Obviously, Jerry Yates is a little bit more, maybe not quite a focal point, but he offers a little bit more. So yeah, it's interesting to see which way we will go. I fully expect us to be rigid, trying to obviously a typical away team. And it'll be all about if you've got the quality to pick us off, if I'm honest, which obviously Middlesbrough on Saturday struggled to do whilst having nearly 80% of the possession. So I I'm not as bold to predict Derby to win, but what I will say is any point in the Championship's good is a good point for me. So I've not seen enough of Watford, unfortunately, to obviously, other than you've won 3 out of 3, so that should absolutely put the wind up us all. And obviously, I've seen what Blackburn managed to do and score 12 in 3 games as well, so or 14, and we know how they kind of play. So I think with a few tweaks of Derby defensively, I think we can be solid. It'll be all about if we get the opportunity up front and if we can put it away. I'm going 0-0.
0-0. It's a solid performance, isn't it? A solid away performance. Clean sheet to take back to Pride Park with you. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I really do appreciate it. It's great to get you back on the Voices of a Vic, and we'll be sure to be in touch to get you back on for the return fixture. I think it's in January when we're playing you guys. So thank you for your time tonight. Really do appreciate it.
All the best, mate. Thank you very much for inviting us.
No worries. Anytime, boys. So thank you everyone for watching tonight. Really do appreciate it. If you've liked the video, hit that like button. Also hit that subscribe button as well. And if you're listening on your audio platforms as well, hit that follow button as well, to make sure we pop up whenever there's a live episode for you guys. I'll be back Sunday evening for a review of the Derby County game. I'm not too sure who will be joining me but Mike's sonning himself over in Spain, I believe. I think he's leaving Friday night, so he's leaving me on my own again. But I'll be either joined by Joe, Katie, or Cam as usual to give you content for Sunday evening. But yeah, we'll be back on Sunday. Thank you very much, boys, for giving us a massive insight on Derby County. Be an interesting game at Vicarage Road on Saturday. We'll see you all soon. Come on, you Orns.